Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mellow Monday. Oh man, it is just one awesome morning to be outside and just taking a deep breath, breathing in all that good air, and just realizing you're alive, and Jesus is alive, and we all will be alive in Him in glory. Okay, what's going on with our psalm this week? It's Psalm 16. That's what we'll be looking at, and it's a psalm that was chosen specifically for the Easter season, because what we have as our first reading from the book of Acts this coming week is Peter giving this marvelous Pentecost sermon. Yeah, he's giving we're getting ahead of the story here. Pentecost, that's a couple weeks away yet. But no, we're going to get a little chunk of it right now. Actually, just a little chunk of that sermon. And it's part that talks about the crucifixion of Jesus and his death, but his being rescued from death, risen from the dead. You know, he's not in hell. And that's what this psalm talks about. It's a psalm of David, called a miskel of David. And what's that? Well, we're not exactly sure, although the root of the Hebrew for that word miskel is that it's something that was carved or engraved. So possibly on some big piece of stone, this psalm was chiseled into it so that people would come to the temple area and they would recite that as some people say this is a lament, but it doesn't quite fit all the categories very well of a lament. It's more of a confession of faith. You are my God. You know, in you I put my trust, that sort of thing. And because of that, there's descriptions of what happens to the person who puts their trust in God all through this psalm. Well, a lot of it is quoted by Peter in his sermon, and that's why we'll be looking at it this coming Sunday. But just a couple parts here, right, to let you in on some of the really good stuff here. Keep me safe, O God. I've run for dear life to you. I say to God, be my Lord. Without you, nothing makes sense. Now, I just read that from the Message, and here's what the Revised Standard Version says. Protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. All right? So now, what's going on throughout this psalm is that there's some of the Hebrew portions of it that are kind of little wonky in a way that we don't exactly know what they're trying to tell us. We don't know some of that vocabulary, and so you'll have different English translations saying different things from time to time. Don't worry about it. Just get to the main part, which I believe is verse 5. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. What's that all about? Well, really, it's kind of making reference to once the people returned from Egypt, where they had been enslaved by Pharaoh, and they came up into the promised land, they were all given property in the promised land. There were boundary lines established for the different tribes, and it's kind of making reference to that. But now listen to how the Message puts it. My choice is you, God, first and only, and now I find I'm your choice. Wow, you set me up with a house and yard, and then you made me your heir. So all these good things that God has for us, why? Because we have chosen God as our God, as opposed to all these other gods that reign around me. Now, another reason why this was probably chosen, besides being a part of Peter's sermon that he quotes, but also there's an Easter theme in there. What? There's an Easter theme in there? Yep. Let's get down to it I'm going to go to the Revised Standard Version here. Verse 10. For you do not give me up to Sheol, or let your faithful one see the pit. And those are Sheol and pit are the words that we find throughout the Old Testament. They're analogous to hell in the New Testament in most places, okay? The abode of the dead, the place of the dead. You don't give me up to that. God raised Jesus from the dead. And Peter makes that quite clear in his sermon. And as he's quoting this at length from this Psalm of David, David felt like he was in the midst of hell many, many times during his life. He was on the run quite a bit from his enemies, always praying to God for safety and protection. And when he finds it, he breaks out into these wonderful psalms of praise and psalms of trust, because, hey, all of life sometimes is full of troubles and woes. But if we put our trust in God, he will be there as our refuge. Going back to the very first verse, protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. Okay, it's a wonderful, beautiful day. Go out and enjoy it, and just realize he is risen, risen indeed. Blessings be with you.